My name is Brian, and I never thought I would be in this situation. I live a normal life, working as a manager for a trading company. I'm married to Claire, and everything was business as usual until this happened. My wife often goes to visit friends for the weekend. This time it started as usual. Brian, I'm going to Emma's. I miss the girls, so I'll be back tomorrow, she said. You don't mind, do you? Of course I didn't mind. I was used to trips like this. When she left, I decided to have a real bachelor's night. I got a couple of beers out of the fridge, turned on my favorite action movie, and lay on the couch in just my underwear. I was so engrossed in the movie and the beer that I didn't even hear the front door open. Suddenly, I heard a familiar voice. Brian? Are you home? It was my mother-in-law, Susan. I almost choked on my chips. Oh, I'm sorry, Susan, I'm not dressed. I mumbled, trying to cover myself with a couch cushion. Come on, son-in-law, don't be embarrassed. I'm not a stranger, she grinned as she walked into the room. I have to say that my mother-in-law, in her 45 years, takes excellent care of herself. Many people even think she and Claire are sisters. She always had an elegant style, neatly styled hair, and a natural confidence in her movements. It wasn't hard to see why people mistook them for sisters. Where did you get the keys? I asked. Claire gave them to me a long time ago, just in case. I brought you groceries. I thought you were both home, she said, starting to sort through the bags in the kitchen. I couldn't help but notice how comfortable she felt, moving around our kitchen as if it were her own. There was something strangely calming about her presence, though it did seem a little odd given my current state of undress. I went to help her with the groceries and then the phone rang. It was Claire. Brian, here's the deal. Kate's here for a visit. We haven't seen each other in years. I'll stay another day. I agreed, though something inside me was uneasy. I couldn't explain what it was, but the thought of being alone with Susan for the rest of the evening made me feel insecure. I was alone with my mother-in-law, and she offered to make dinner. She moved around the kitchen with ease, and I began to watch her. Later we watched some kind of movie. Susan told stories from her youth and laughed. I had never noticed what an interesting conversationalist she was. She talked about her adventures in her 20s, the concerts she went to and the road trips she took with friends. I was fascinated by her stories. Her laughter was infectious. Then she complained that her back was hurting after fitness. Brian, could you please help me? They say you have golden hands. I'd hesitated for a moment, but then nodded. Sure, Susan. I started massaging her back. Her skin was so soft, and she smelled like flowers. I realized it was lavender, a scent that seemed to suit her perfectly. The evening was winding down. We drank wine, and the conversation grew more and more intimate. She told me about her dreams, her regrets, and what she wished she had done differently. I began to open up to her, too, sharing stories I'd never told Claire. We seemed to be two people who understood each other in a way that no one else did. I began to notice what an attractive woman she was. There was warmth in her eyes, and her smile was genuine. She looked at me with such intensity that I felt both vulnerable and aroused at the same time. The room around us seemed to shrink, and the air felt heavier. I don't know who made the first move, but before I knew it, we were kissing. It was like a release, something that had been building up for a long time. What happened next turned my whole life upside down. The next morning we woke up in the same bed and neither of us knew how to look each other in the eyes. The awkwardness was palpable. Susan quickly gathered her things and went home, leaving me alone with my conscience and guilt. I sat for a long time trying to comprehend what had just happened. How had we crossed that line? What did it mean for Claire, for our family? It's been 3 months since then. We pretend like nothing happened, but every family dinner turns into torture. My mother-in-law tries to stay away from me, and I do the same. When we are in the same room, we barely exchange a few words. Sometimes I catch a glimpse of her, and I think she remembers that night too. There's an unspoken tension between us, a secret we both carry around but can never admit. It eats away at me, and I wonder if it's doing the same to her. I've thought about telling Claire, but the thought of hurting her is unbearable. She trusts me, and I can't bear the thought of breaking that trust. Every time Claire and Susan talk and laugh together, I feel such an acute sense of guilt that it takes my breath away. Susan, too, has started avoiding family gatherings more often, making excuses to leave early or not show up at all. I know it's because of me. One evening, after another tense family dinner, Susan catches me alone in the hallway. "We need to talk," she whispered, her eyes filled with a mixture of fear and determination. My heart pounded in my chest, and I nodded. We retreated to a quiet corner of the house, and she spoke in a low voice. "We can't go on like this, Brian. The pretending, the avoidance, it's killing me." I nodded, my throat dry. "I know. It's killing me too." She took a deep breath. "For Claire's sake, we have to find a way to get through this. I don't know how, but we have to try." I agreed, though I had no idea how we would manage it. The weight of our secret seemed unbearable, and yet I knew we couldn't let it ruin everything. We had to find a way to coexist, to somehow come to terms with what had happened. But as I watched her leave that night, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was far from over. The memories of that night lingered between us, a constant reminder of the line we'd crossed and the chaos it had caused in our lives.